How's it going, Giants fans? My name is Alex, my co-host here, Anthony Rivardo. We got a big preseason game coming up tomorrow against the New England Patriots. The New York Giants finally have an opportunity to give us some insight into what they've been doing, some growth, some offensive scheme. And, I think there's going to be a lot of good takeaways from tomorrow's preseason game. Finally, football is here. We're getting ever so close to the start of the regular season in about a month from tomorrow, actually. So that's a really good sign. We're making our way, and really there's a couple of main takeaways that I think that we'll be watching closely. Of course, I'll be watching the game and posting all the highlights to social media for you guys so you have an idea if you're not watching the game, if you want to watch them over. So make sure to follow along on the social media front for all the takeaways, Anthony. Before we dive into the 5 things we want to see during this preseason game, how you doing today, my friend?
Man, I'm doing great. Football is finally back. Starting tomorrow, New York Giants football is back. I know it's only the preseason, but man, I'm excited nonetheless. I can't wait to see Daniel Jones go out there and play in this new offense if he does play tomorrow. But, I'm also excited just to see Brian Daboll on the sideline, to see Kayvon Thibodeaux in full pads. I'm just excited for Giants football to finally return in any capacity. And preseason is good enough for me, man. As you mentioned, 1 month from tomorrow, we will be watching regular season New York Giants football. So start the countdown now. We're a month away. I cannot wait. But I'm really excited for this preseason game. I think there's a lot of things to keep a close eye on as we start to ramp up towards the regular season. This is the time for the roster to really get settled in. This is when they're really going to construct it. They're going to have to make cuts every week now. So we're going to see, of course, some really great preseason standouts. I'm sure some guys might kind of falter and not stand out as much, and they might cost themselves their jobs because of that. So it's going to be really interesting to see how the roster gets shaped out through this preseason. I'm excited to see it kick off tomorrow night.
Absolutely, me too. So let's jump into the first thing that I do want to see for this Giants team, and that's Kayvon Thibodeaux. I am desperate to see Kayvon Thibodeaux play. The 1v1 battles he showed us, the clips that we've seen against Andrew Thomas, Evan Neal, he has been winning. Brian Cox, the assistant defensive line coach, who has taken over as a defensive line coach in the absence of Patterson, who's dealing with some physical issue. And Brian Cox is basically saying, like, Kayvon Thibodeaux looks like the real deal. He looks like he's going to be a star. Specifically, the quote was, the guy works, he's smart, guys gravitate toward him. He's showing great promise. His personality is really good because he's versatile. He can do a lot of different things. He can have a lot of different conversations. His play is going to speak for itself. As a rookie, I already expect Kayvon Thibodeaux to fall into a leadership role very early on, not because of what he does behind the scenes, but because of the production he's going to put on the football field. If he's healthy, he is lethal. He has unbelievable tangible traits, the bend around the edge, the physical size, the strength, the speed to power transitions. He can set the edge and run defense. I expect to see him for about a series or two tomorrow, probably more like one series. They don't want to risk it, especially with Azeez Ojulari still fighting that hamstring injury and looking to come back in a couple of weeks here. But Kayvon Thibodeaux, man, this is going to be an opportunity to see us against real talent, and I think he's actually going to put on a show for us, at least in the minimal amount of snaps. We're going to see some good stuff from him. This defense that Wink Martindale deploys, it just basically, the entire concept is overwhelming offenses with numbers, blitzing too many guys, and then they have blockers. That's going to set up Kayvon Thibodeaux with a lot of 1v1 situations, and because of that, he's going to have a lot of opportunities to win those 1v1 battles, especially against lesser opponents. Most tackles in the league, I would imagine, aren't as good as Andrew Thomas, so he's already going up against one of the best guys that you can find, and he's winning a lot of those 1v1 battles. So I'd argue he's going to have an even easier time against some of these other players, especially for the Patriots. And apparently their offense and offensive line have been abysmal during camp. So this could be a day for the defense to feast early on. But what are your thoughts on Kayvon Thibodeaux, and how excited are you to see him in the first time in live action?
Dude, of course, I'm thrilled to watch Kayvon Thibodeaux. I mean, we watched the Hall of Fame game last week, right? We saw Trayvon Walker get his first sack. It was a preseason sack, but he got a sack, first overall pick in the draft. And I believe that Kayvon Thibodeaux is actually a better player than Trayvon Walker. I think he was a better prospect, and I think he's going to have an even larger impact from day one. So I'm expecting at least a sack or two from Kayvon Thibodeaux. Not really. Don't want to put out those lofty expectations for a preseason game, but I'm just really excited to see Kayvon Thibodeaux go out there, see him go up against a different opponent. He's been going up against Andrew Thomas and Evan Neal and some of the backup offensive linemen for the Giants every day. But now he gets to go up against someone completely different that he's never even met before in his life. And I think that's an exciting new challenge for a rookie defensive end, edge rusher, to just kind of step into the preseason and go up against a new opponent and see how they fare. And I'm really just imagining that it's going to fare really well for Kayvon Thibodeaux. I think he'll get a sack or two. I think he's going to have a really productive game. I'm expecting the most from Kayvon Thibodeaux this season. I do think he's going to be an instant impact day one rookie. I don't think he's one of those players that needs an adjustment period, needs to learn the pro game. I think he's pro ready, and I'm really excited to see him hit the preseason field just to get us warmed up to what Kayvon Thibodeaux can bring as we head into the regular season next month. And I think that Kayvon Thibodeaux, again, and we've been saying it, Defensive Rookie of the Year candidate, and he is my favorite to win that award.
Yeah, man. I mean, look, he can make an instant impact. He's going to be getting the snaps. He has Leonard Williams alongside him, Azeez Ojulari, Dexter Lawrence, a very, very good young defensive front that I would say could be very underrated this year going into the season. So excited to see him. We'll obviously have all the clips for you guys after the game tomorrow, and I will show those on social media so you can get an idea if you missed any of the games or wanted to watch over the clips one more time. So the second thing I really want to see is Daniel Jones feeling comfortable in this offense. The early returns from practice, the narrative right now is that he looks awful. He's had a lot of bad practices, a lot of bad decisions. But I would throw into the mix that, a lot of these situations that Brian Daboll has been throwing him into are inopportune for him. Like they're supposed to challenge him. There's even scenarios where they actually, have him throw to a receiver, even if they're covered, like just trying to force the ball in there, trying to find ways to get it to guys in heavy coverage. So Daniel Jones right now, I want to see him feel comfortable. I want to see him looking a little bit more, comfortable in the system and the scheme behind this new rebuilt offensive line. Understanding the schematics, understanding what his reads are. I want to see him getting through the progressions a little bit more efficiently than we have in the past. Just watching his eyes. I don't want to see him stare down a receiver and then watch a defender undercut. Like the Patriots always have a pretty strong defense. So this will be a good challenge for Daniel Jones in the first kind of series or two, however much he plays. But I would like to see him just look a little bit more comfortable, make some throws, make some nice plays, don't turn the ball over, and just show us that, he can be a good quarterback and he is progressing in this system. That's kind of what I'm hoping for, in this first preseason game. But again, if he does make some mistakes, it's the first preseason game, so I'm not going to be like going crazy over it. I expect it. But what are you expecting to see from DJ? Like, what would you hope to see in terms of just development and progress in the new system?
Yeah, I mean, all eyes are on Daniel Jones right now. He's the quarterback of the New York Giants. He hasn't proven himself. And in fact, he's proven to be not a great quarterback so far. He has not played up to the expectations of a 6th overall pick from the 2019 NFL draft. And throughout this preseason, there's been a lot of controversy coming from Giants camp because a lot of reporters are saying Daniel Jones looks bad, like not even close to good. Some of them are saying he just looks plain, flat out bad. And that is, of course, concerning for Giants fans. There's a lot of Giants fans who are really starting to lose all hope for Daniel Jones. But the one thing that we have to keep saying is the regular season is still a month away. We're super excited for that because it feels so close. But keep in mind, that's also pretty far away. That's a full another month of practice, of preseason, of all the things that Daniel Jones needs in order to get comfortable in this offense and get ready to play some regular season football. So he's not there yet. He's not regular season ready. We shouldn't expect Daniel Jones to go out there and tear it up in the preseason. But if he does, maybe he's way ahead of the curve. Maybe he's way ahead of where we expect him to be in terms of his development in this offense. What I'm looking for from Daniel Jones is pocket presence in this game. That's all I want to see. I don't even know how much he's going to play. Maybe he plays a drive. Maybe he doesn't even play at all. Maybe he plays a full quarter. We'll see. That's to be determined. But whenever Daniel Jones does play in the preseason, the one thing that I'm looking for is pocket presence and comfortability. I want to see him go up to the line of scrimmage, call a play, maybe even call an audible, check a play, call a signal out to the running back, call a signal out to the slot receiver, whatever. Be comfortable in that offense. And then when that ball is snapped, I don't want to see him get all finicky, run out of the pocket, bail on the play before it ever begins. I want to see him stand there in a pocket, be comfortable, survey the field, and make some throws. I don't want him to stare down one read and just throw it that way. Go to your second read, go to your third read, your fourth read. We've seen him do it before. I remember against the Washington football team, or Washington Commanders, now back in his rookie season, 2019, his second start of his career, there was a touchdown pass that he threw to Wayne Gallman. That was his 5th read on that play. Daniel Jones has the ability to get through the reads. He just doesn't do it frequently enough. It's all about consistency with Daniel Jones. He's consistently inconsistent, and that's the issue with Daniel Jones. He needs to be consistently good, and that's been his problem. But you think back to some of those plays when he was a rookie, when Pat Shurmur was coaching him, he was getting through his reads. It really wasn't until Jason Garrett got to town that Daniel Jones really became a one-read quarterback. But now with Brian Daboll and Mike Kafka coaching him, we're hoping that he can get back to being a multi-read quarterback and not be a one-read quarterback. But for me, that's what I'm most looking forward to seeing in the preseason. Is he acting as a one-read quarterback, or is he comfortable enough to stand in the pocket, let the play progress, and go through his progressions? Because that's the key for Daniel Jones in the regular season. If he can go through his progressions and make all the right throws, he can be a good quarterback. There's no doubts about his physical capabilities. He's got the arm strength. He's got the speed for sure. He's a mobile, agile, athletic quarterback. So he's got all those intangible traits, but you have to teach this guy to get through his reads. Unfortunately, like I said, it seems like Jason Garrett taught him how not to get through the reads and just settle on that first read. But I think that now we have some good coaching on Daniel Jones. The one thing that I'm really paying attention to in this preseason is, can he go through his progressions, be comfortable in that pocket? His comfortability within this offense is going to be what makes this offense break or make. That's it. If this offense is good this year, it's because Daniel Jones is comfortable. If this offense is bad, it's because he's finicky in the pocket, he bails on plays, and he's a one-read quarterback. That's how simple this really is. It all comes down to Daniel Jones, and so that's what I'm looking forward to in this preseason. I just want to see a poised and comfortable quarterback in that pocket.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing. And I also would like to see him a little bit more flexibility and creativity in terms of, if the play does break down, can he execute on the run? Can he execute, without putting himself in harm's way? Because we've seen him try to do things on his own and dive headfirst into players and get injured. I want to see him, try to get escape instead of taking off with his legs. Maybe try to like direct his receivers. We've seen Aaron Rodgers, we've seen Tom Brady, we've seen every great quarterback point out receivers and say, go this way, do this, maybe have a little bit more, just awareness in terms of where he can throw the football instead of taking off with his legs and maybe potentially injuring himself. Every single injury he's had is because he was running the football. So maybe don't try to run the football all the time if you don't need to. Throw the ball. Because that's going to ultimately get you more yardage anyway and keep you healthy at the end of the day. So the third option here, the third thing I want to see is offensive line progression and consistency. Of course, we got Evan Neal, Mark Lewinsky, John Feliciano, Shane Lemieux. Josh Azudu is questionable for this game, so I don't know if he'll play. And then, of course, we got Andrew Thomas, who may or may not play. He did have that little bit of an ankle scare a couple days ago, so seems to be doing just fine. Walked through yesterday in practice, but ultimately I don't know how much action he'll get. But otherwise, I'd like to see Evan Neal and Mark Lewinsky showcase a little bit of that run blocking prowess and showcase a little bit better pass blocking than what we've seen in the years past. So I'll be taking a good hard look at Evan Neal to see if he can hold up in coverage and what he can accomplish here. So that's really my main thing. The offensive line is going to be a big one. Obviously, that's a huge variable in Daniel Jones' success. But how important do you think the offensive line and seeing a little bit of their progression is in this first preseason game?
I think it's of the utmost importance. We have been waiting and waiting and waiting for years and years to see a Giants offensive line with competence. And so it would be nice, it would be refreshing if in the first preseason game we see a solid unit in front of the quarterback. That would be really nice. Or at least a solid unit in the running game, open up lanes for Saquon Barkley or Matt Breida, whoever's taking the majority of the handoffs in this game. Of course, it's not going to be Saquon Barkley taking the majority. But I'm going to be taking a look at the young guys on this offensive line. The number one name that I am focusing on is Shane Lemieux. He's the number one guy that I've been paying the most attention to all offseason long, all throughout training camp, the summer, all the practices. Shane Lemieux is kind of like that X factor for me on the Giants offensive line. I think that his performance this year could kind of make or break this whole offense, and not to really just put too much pressure on Shane Lemieux and not to put too high of expectations on him either, because that's kind of my point here. How much should we be expecting from a 2020 fifth round rookie that tore his patellar in 2021 and is now starting in 2022? Though you don't want to put too lofty of expectations on a guy coming off of a career like that. So when I'm taking a look at Shane Lemieux and saying, okay, this Giants offensive line improved at right tackle with Evan Neal, it improved at right guard with Mark Lewinsky. I think they also improved at center with John Feliciano, and Andrew Thomas is still here. But then you take a look at the left guard position. Did they improve? That's a real question. I don't know that for sure. I feel certain about that on every other position, but for left guard, it is a humongous question mark because I still don't know what Shane Lemieux is, and he's entering his third season in the NFL. So the number one guy all throughout the preseason that I'm taking a look at is Shane Lemieux, because the last time we saw him start significant amount of time, it was in his rookie season, and he was the worst graded pass blocker ever in PFF history. Take that with a grain of salt, of course, because it's PFF, but we all can watch the game ourselves and see Shane Lemieux was really bad as a rookie. He could not get the job done as a pass protector, but that was 2 years ago. So is he a better player than he was 2 years ago? That's my big question mark for Shane Lemieux for this offensive line. Is the left guard position going to be improved? Because again, I think all the other positions have improved, but the left guard position, I still don't know. So that's what I'm previewing during this preseason. Is there improvement at the left guard spot? Is there someone who can help Andrew Thomas continue to elevate his game and develop in the NFL? Or is there going to be someone that might hold Andrew Thomas back and hamper his development? That's my huge question mark here. I'm hoping for the best from Shane Lemieux. I'm really encouraged by all of the great things that I've read about him and seen from him in the training camp period. But it's time to put practice into play. Time to go out onto that preseason field and start bashing some heads in and being a dominant left guard. That's what I'm hoping for from Shane Lemieux. And listen, I'm not trying to write him off and bring up his rookie season because I'm down on Shane Lemieux. I'm actually very high on Shane Lemieux right now. This is the most confidence I've ever had in Shane Lemieux. This is the most hope that I've ever had for the left guard position in the last 4 years. So I'm really rooting hard for Shane Lemieux. I want to see him succeed, but I can't wait to see him actually get onto the preseason field tomorrow night and get a little glimpse as to what he can bring to the Giants football team in this upcoming season.
Yeah, man. Shane Lemieux is a big one. That is definitely a huge one for this Giants team. We're going to see. And look, I'm rooting for the guy 100%. I want him to be the best offensive lineman on this team. That's ultimately how I am as a fan. But I think that Ezeudu winning that battle, having 4 years of cost control, like you're looking at, I want every single Giants player to succeed. But once you get down to like individual players on the team and who would be better for the long-term future, Ezeudu being on a 4-year deal as a rookie definitely has a little bit more value. So, I would like for him to win that battle, but if Shane Lemieux wins it fair and square, I will root for him, obviously. So that's definitely one that I'll be watching as well. That's a big one for the Giants and locking out that left guard spot in between John Feliciano and Andrew Thomas. Now, the number 4 thing that I do want to see is depth at key positions, right? We've seen injuries hit this team in the past, and they were pretty significant, and they really hampered our ability to score points. And at some defensive spots, really just kind of held us back. And now we have a couple positions that aren't situated. We had James Bradbury in the past. Now you don't. Now you have Adoree Jackson, who's good, but Aaron Robinson is far from proven. He's had his fair share of struggles in camp. He's been physical, but I do think that he has a long way to go before we can trust him as a competent everyday player. So hopefully he has some good snaps in this game against the Patriots. But the depth of the key positions that I'm really looking at right now is tackle. Because behind Andrew Thomas and Evan Neal, there is nobody. They have Ezeudu who has experience at left tackle at UNC, but they just don't. Matt Cano is supposed to be your swing. Matt Pert is still, recovering from that ACL tear. They don't have much talent behind those guys, so that's a little bit of a concern for me. I say receiver definitely is a key position for this team with all the injuries that have hit them in the past, but they have a good amount of depth right now, as much as any other team would have. So, Darius Slayton, obviously, we've talked about him, could be on his way out if he doesn't really step things up lately in the next couple of weeks. But Richie James has had a really good camp. Colin Johnson has looked really good. So, you do have some decent pieces there. Tight end, there's not much depth behind Daniel Bellinger. We don't even know what he is yet. So I'll be keeping a look at him a lot. This is going to be a big game to see what our tight end position looks like. Because obviously Evan Ingram's gone, Kyle Rudolph's gone. Now you have a rookie 4th-round pick who's been apparently kicking ass. So that's a really good sign for the team, but they have a long way to go. I'd say other positions, defensive edge rushers, one that I want to take a look at. Obviously you have Kayvon. Azeez Ojulari's injured right now, but you got Quincy Roche. You obviously have Ocean Ximenez. You got Jaheed Ward, a couple of really good players there, rotational guys. So I do like that. And then strong safety is interesting because behind Julian Love, you don't really got much. You got Andrew Adams, who really fills that free safety role behind Xavier McKinney. So, if Julian Love, if anything happens to him, that'll be interesting. And then in the slot, you have Cordell Flott behind Darnay Holmes right now. So, what depth spots are you kind of looking at right now and saying, those are ones that we got to be careful about. We don't have much talent behind them. I'd like to see some guys kind of emerge from the ground here to maybe kind of pencil themselves in and cement themselves as good depth reserve players.
Really, all the ones you covered, I'm taking a look at as well, but just to hit on a few specifically, the cornerback position, I am a little bit worried with Aaron Robinson. I don't think he's been super impressive during the training camp period, so I'm curious to see how he performs on the field. So definitely keeping an eye on him. One player that you didn't mention that I will mention is Yusuf Corker playing safety. Now, I think that we've got some solid depth in Yusuf Corker, undrafted free agent out of Kentucky. He's been really impressive all throughout the training camp period, and he's been playing with the green dot on his helmet, and he's going to be calling plays with the second and third team during the preseason. So I'm super excited to see what he can bring to the Giants defense. I think that this is a young, underrated guy that could maybe make an impact and be very solid depth for the Giants. So I'm keeping an eye on him. And I'm also keeping an eye on the other rookie with the green dot, Darian Beavers at the linebacker position. That's another position that we need to see some depth grow, because behind Blake Martinez, you got Tate Crowder, you got Darian Beavers, and you kind of got a bunch of people that you don't necessarily want to see on the football field, right? So hopefully we could see Darian Beavers go out there in the preseason, develop, and maybe prove to be a quality starter. That would be great, man, to get a starter in the late rounds of the draft at the linebacker position. But again, he's wearing the green dot, so I'm curious to see how he performs with that dot on his helmet, calling the plays alongside Yusuf Corker. Now, switching over to the offensive side of the ball, you mentioned that the tackle positions, there isn't a whole bunch of depth there. The Giants kind of have a little bit of a revolving door going around at backup offensive tackle. They had Matt Gono. He's gone. They've signed another guy. He's gone. They signed another guy. It's a little bit weird what's going on over there. And I know Joshua Zito is going to be second string left tackle. That's what they have him as on the depth chart. But he's injured right now. And what if Andrew Thomas were to get injured? What if his ankle flares up again and Josh Azidu is not ready to play? Well, then we're kind of screwed because we're on a third string tackle. So I need to see some of these third and fourth string tackles step in there and play some solid football so that I don't have nightmares thinking about what happens if there's injuries on the offensive line. Another position, you mentioned it, tight end. That's a big one. Daniel Bellinger is healthy, ready to go, and I'm super excited to see what he brings to the table. I'm very high on him. I think he's a major sleeper, someone that I would even say if you're playing a dynasty fantasy football league, go ahead and stash him on the back end of your roster. I think in a couple years, this kid can be really good. I'm very high on Daniel Bellinger. But behind Daniel Bellinger, since this rookie fourth-round pick is the starting tight end of the New York Giants, major question marks with Ricky Seals-Jones, Jordan Akins. Those are kind of players that I'm not super high on. I think they're kind of just backups at the very best, and they also have injury history from what I remember, so need to see those guys perform. And two other positions that I want to remember or touch on before we move on to the next topic is quarterback. I want to see the depth behind Daniel Jones. I want to see if Daniel Jones doesn't play well, how does Tyrod Taylor play? I talked about being comfortable in a new offensive scheme for Daniel Jones. Same goes for Tyrod Taylor. I want to see comfortability in the scheme. From what I've seen from him on the clips of training camp, he's looked very comfortable. He's looked ready. He is a pro. He's a long-term veteran in the NFL. So I'm pretty high on Tyrod Taylor, and I think he's going to be a very high-quality backup for the Giants. But let's see. Maybe he'll outperform Daniel Jones in the preseason, and then the controversy will just continue to increase, right? But then last position that I do want to mention is running back. Saquon Barkley is healthy. Looks like his old self from his rookie season, maybe even better in training camp. He looks stronger. He looks faster, more powerful, and more decisive running behind a decent offensive line in training camp. But who's behind Saquon Barkley? Matt Breida has actually been performing really well in training camp. There's a lot of buzz about Matt Breida, former San Francisco 49ers running back, and I'm really excited to see what he can do in the preseason because I think this is a guy that we can hopefully feel comfortable with backing up Saquon Barkley. We all know Saquon Barkley, ultra talent, but his career has been derailed by injuries. You can't say for sure that he won't get injured this upcoming season. History would actually tell you at some point this season, he's going to miss time because he's missed time pretty much every year other than his rookie season. So I'm hoping for a fully healthy season from Saquon Barkley, a dominant year out of him, but I'd like to know that there's some sort of safety net behind him in case he does get injured again. So I'm excited to see what Matt Breida can do in the preseason so I can just feel a little bit more comfortable about the backup running back position heading into the regular season.
Yeah, absolutely. So the fifth thing I want to see here, this one really pained a lot of Giants fans last year. This one is a little bit more of an underrated thing, and it's just the general ease of coaching during a game. The amount of bad clock management things we saw last year with Joe Judge, was almost incomprehensible, inconceivable to see how many times Judge messed with the clock and it did not turn out his way, or just failed to call a timeout, or used all. How many times do we see this man call all of his 3 timeouts in the first freaking half of games?
How about when he threw a challenge
God.
flag that he didn't have and penalized the Giants? Remember that?
I mean, the shit that we saw this man do sometimes made me really question my own fanhood of this team. Those were the few moments where I was like, I may just quit football, cold turkey. I can't do this anymore. To have that much of an incompetent coach to call all your timeouts, throw a challenge flag, we didn't have one, all the stupid damn shit that we saw this man do made me really question my fanhood of this team. I was like, I cannot believe. And look, we're not the ones making the decisions, right? We're not the owners of the team. We're not the guys interviewing coaches. This is not on our shoulders, right? At the end of the day, that sucked, right? That sucked to see. We were down so bad. I just want to see Brian Daboll call a clean game, save your damn timeouts, Don't throw challenge flags when you don't have them. Just call a clean, efficient game and be consistent and smart with your decision making. Just have a brain, have an inkling, have a cell, have one brain cell, just one. That's all it takes, not to throw a freaking challenge flag when you don't have any. Okay, that's all it takes, guys. One brain cell, just one. Hopefully, he has more than that because we need a lot more brain cells than that. So, Brian Daboll, that's all I want to see this coaching staff be consistent, clean substitutions. Mike Kafka is going to be calling plays, I believe. So, hopefully he's pretty clean with that as well. That's all I want to all I want to see. We have a first-year head coach and a first-year offensive coordinator. There's going to be hiccups, but I'd like to see just ease of transition, good clock management, basic stuff that coaches need to accomplish at the general fundamental level. That's the fifth thing I do want to see, because I think the last year that really got on my nerves, and I think a lot of people will agree with me on that. So, Anthony, what do you think about that?
One thing that I think is I need a win here. I was so off on Joe Judge. I was so wrong. I, was so clear. My allegiance is to Joe Judge. I was a huge fan of his, a major supporter of his all throughout the Giants Twitter and YouTube community. And I was wrong, way wrong. But I've kind of got the same thing going for Brian Daboll. I've been way on the Brian Daboll train from the beginning, before the Giants even hired him. I was like, that's the guy. That's who they need to hire. I want Brian Daboll. So I need to be right about this, just for my own mental sanity, for other people to respect me. I need to be right about Brian Daboll, and I think I will be. But, again, this is preseason. You mentioned it. There's going to be hiccups. First-year offensive coordinator, first-year head coach, new roster, completely just reconstructed by a first-year general manager. Keep that in mind as well. There are going to be hiccups with the 2022 New York Football Giants. But for Brian Daboll, I do want to see how he responds when the going gets tough. Joe Judge didn't always respond with the most class, didn't always respond with the most dignity when the going went tough. He did kind of throw players under the bus at times. He did kind of, take his anger out on them in practice. It seemed like he would get frustrated and then yell at them and then curse at them and then make them run extra laps at practice. That kind of stuff. It didn't work. It didn't translate. We were hoping that maybe it would be so different. It would work. Joe Judge would find his success. It just didn't. But Brian Daboll is like night and day difference compared to Joe Judge. He's a completely different brand of coach, different style, different demeanor, different characteristics to Brian Daboll than there are to Joe Judge. So I'm really excited to see how the team responds in the preseason, how these backup guys respond, these depth pieces, how do they play with this new coaching staff? I think it is going to be really important. As you mentioned, the timeouts, the challenge flags, all that kind of stuff. Clock management is super important. And I know they're not going to show off too much of the schemes because they want to keep that stuff on their wraps for the regular season. But I do think you're going to see a much different offense even in the preseason compared to what we saw from last regular season. So I am going to be keeping an eye out on that. But I do think it's super important. Hopefully there's no miscommunication errors, with Kafka, Daboll, anything like that. Nothing that's obvious enough for fans to see from watching in the stands or at home. But yeah, I think that it is super important to see that these young coaches, these new rookie coaches in their positions, are comfortable. They're cool, calm, and collected. That's kind of what I was saying with Daniel Jones as his first year in this offense. We need to see him cool, calm, and collected, but we also need to see the same things from the guys that are leading the offense as leader, right? Daniel Jones is the leader of the offense. He is the quarterback. But who's his leader? Mike Kafka, Brian Daboll, those are the real leaders of the team. Wink Martindale as well. I want to see these guys be leaders from the sidelines. Of course, they're the coaches. I'm expecting a lot from this coaching staff. I'm really high on this staff. I think it's a massive improvement over what the Giants had in 2020 and 2021. And so I am super excited just to see these guys take the field with their clipboards and their notepads and start coaching it up. And again, you're right about that, Alex. We do need to see them manage the clock correctly, call the timeouts at necessary times, and not gaff any timeouts or challenge flags. They need to be on their A game from the get-go so that we as Giants fans can feel confident in a new coaching regime, because we've seen way too many coaching regimes come and go through that revolving door that is the New York Giants coaching staff hierarchy, whatever you want to call it. We definitely need to see some little bit of confidence, something to give us confidence heading into the regular season. So yeah, I'm all in with you on Brian Daboll, and I'm excited to see what he can bring to the team as early as the preseason.
Yeah. This is a chance also for the coaching staff to iron out these kinks too. So I'm not, like I said, I'd like to see ease of coaching. I'd like to see these things, but reality is we're probably going to see some hiccups. We're probably going to see some adversity and some moments where like, okay, like that's not right. And that's okay, because these games do not count. This is where they have to make the decisions and the corrections moving forward into the regular season. So this is the time to make the mistakes. This is the time to be a little bit more flexible, a little bit more lenient, but also try to be playing it, treating it as if it's a real live thing and it is a regular season game where it actually matters and it's going to go on the score sheet. So I'm definitely interested to see how this team kind of unfolds in the first preseason game. I don't expect to see a good team. I expect to see a growing team. I expect to see growing pains. But that's just the start of a rebuild. That's what it looks like, my friends. So hopefully we'll see a lot better than we hope for or than we expect. But I am excited. So make sure to drop your comments below in the YouTube section as we can. I'd love to hear narratives and perspectives on what you're expecting from this preseason game against the Patriots. So I am excited about this, guys. It's going to be fun. The football is starting. We have a couple weeks until the regular season. So let's get this thing started. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Make sure to like and subscribe as always. And we'll catch you guys on the next Fireside Giants episode.